Hello, my name is John Mount, and in this presentation, I'd like to introduce an R package for reshaping data called cdata. This presentation is joint work with Nina Zumel. I am a principal consultant at WinVector LLC, a San Francisco-based data science consulting and training company. I'm one of the authors of Practical Data Science with R and a co-author of a number of R packages, most importantly, the vtreat package for statistically sound preparation of data for predictive analytics. For our example problem, we're going to take reproducing a performance plot for Keras or R-Keras into a new format. This is the plot as produced by Keras, and what it shows is, as a function of epoch, or how long you've trained a deep learning net, the performance of the net both on training data or on test or validation data. Our goal is to replace this graph with this graph. The advantages of the new presentation are up now means better in all facets. Validation performance is the only thing rendered as a horizontal curve, also called test performance, and the training performance, while depicted, is now just the upper envelope of the shaded region, and excess generalization error can be perceived as the shaded area or vertical heights. The data processing issues are, if we're going to use ggplot to build this graph, then the geom ribbon needs both the training and validation results in the same row so that these two columns are available to specify the top and bottom of the ribbon simultaneously. However, facet wrap needs different measures, the loss and accuracy, to be in different rows so that we can facet wrap on them. That was not the shape of the data before us. So we need to reshape the data. Now, of course, we can do this with melt, cast, gather, cbind, join, or some combination of operations, but we're going to do it in one step using the new cdata data reshaping system. The concept is the following. Data has coordinates. This cell of roughly -0.3 is the epoch 2 training loss independent of how the overall table is formatted. Information is grouped in records. This set of cells is all facts about epoch 4, again, regardless of how the table is formatted. Exact realization of records as rows or positions of cells is an irrelevant implementation detail that cdata helps you work around. Now, data is complicated, so let's look at only one row to simplify things. And already, let's correct that. Let's look at only one record. We want to transform this row record into this block record, because this is exactly the format that would work for the plotting. As we've said, each measure is in a different row, and the training versus validation are in different columns in the same row, and while we've done this remapping, we've also cleaned up some names. To perform this transformation using cdata, it is sufficient to draw the transformation. So we've taken the transformation from the previous slide, copied out what the first row actually looks like, and what we want the first row to look like. We then abstract the first row, replacing all numbers with column names from the original data set. We perform the same abstraction on the desired shape or block, and we get this new structure, which we're going to call the control table. The control table specifies how to move row records, which we're going to call rowrecs, to blocks, or blocks to rowrecs. For instance, if we start with a rowrec, as we did in our original data, this command from cdata, rowrecs to blocks, can transform this single row into the desired format. The only additional argument it needs other than the control table is which columns to copy, in this case our keys epoch. It also works as an inverse transform. If we happened to have our data in the block format, the blocks to rowrecs command would pull it backward, and it identifies the blocks by knowing which columns are the keying information, in this case specified by key columns. The control table is the transform. Essentially, it is exactly the transform that takes that abstracted row we wrote down and converts it to the control table itself. It also is able to take the control table itself and, through the inverse transform it again into that abstract row. The anatomy of the control table is as follows. The gray region is not a row, it is the column names. The first column behaves like row names, except for obviously it has one more slot where it can carry the extra key measure. But essentially, think of this column as behaving like row names. That leaves only the yellow region, which we call the control table payload. An interesting fact is pivot, unpivot, or tidyr gather, tidyr spread are exactly the cases where the control table payload is a single column. Back to our task. Here's an extract of the data, 6 rows instead of 1. We build the control table, apply the rowrecs to blocks using the argument control table and columns to copy epoch, and that then produces, as we see an extract of, the data in exactly the right format for plotting. And then we're ready to plot. We show the original plot we produced for Keras and another XGBoost example. The lack of any area or ribbon is showing that test and train performance were identical for this machine learning exercise, which is actually fairly unusual for complex models. Why use cdata? Well, in our opinion, one good reason to use it is it has a very clear and teachable theory, in fact, teachable graphically, as we're attempting here. The abstract data coordinates and abstract records, I think, help get students to separate implementation from meaning, or syntax from semantics. The blocks to rowrecs and rowrecs to blocks are fairly powerful. They take the dual roles of blocks to rowrecs is essentially a project in relational notation, and rowrecs to blocks is essentially a join in relational notation. They're very powerful. They subsume a number of different operations, such as pivot, unpivot, tidyr, spread, gather, one-hot encoding, where you fill in zeros and ones instead of values, are all special cases of this sort of transform. Also, in the feature we showed here, the system can move seamlessly values together or in tandem or concert. You're not forced to work with only one column at a time. cdata itself is based on SQL and DBI. That is actually sort of a minus when working with in-memory data frames, as they are round-tripping through a local database, often just SQLite, or you can pick the database of your choice, which means there's some danger of types being damaged, and you certainly cannot handle complex or nested columns. However, the great advantage of being a pure SQL and DBI implementation is this can be run on just about any DBI compliant database that connects to R, in particular things like Spark or Postgres. Already we have clients using this transform at great scale, which a number of the other pivot and unpivot systems are not able to do database operations directly. And I'd just like to follow up with a thank you. These are links to follow up on this talk. The R package itself is available both on GitHub here and on CRAN. We have 2 very important articles on this theory. The first one is the fluid reshaping with data, and the other one is a theory of rows and columns. So basically the 2 of these give you a really great sort of transitive theory of reshaping data, and the punchline should sort of be in your mind the data is always of one form and we're just seeing different aspects of it. And why the transforms are easy, reversible, and doable is they're not really changing the data, they're just changing the viewable aspect. And then some more follow-ups, the exact Keras plot, link to these slides, and all the code used to knit the diagrams that were used in this talk. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you check out more articles from the WinVector blog and more of our packages on CRAN and GitHub. Thank you.